Person, we are meeting number 4 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Science and Research. We're very honored to have 3 presenters with us today. So we'll have 5-minute presentations from each, and then afterwards we'll have rounds of questioning. For the other members on the committee, we also at 7:30 we will also be breaking and going in camera to take care of some House business. So with that, we will start off our presentation tonight from Dr. Myers.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair and honorable committee members. It's a pleasure to be here to be addressing a committee that's taken up the important work of thinking broadly about science in Canada. A word about myself. I'm from Deep River, Ontario, just up the river. Theoretical physicist, educated in Canada and the United States. Currently, I'm the director of the Perimeter Institute for Theoretical Physics. So what is Perimeter? Perimeter is an independent research center devoted to theoretical physics research, training, and outreach. The Institute was founded through the generosity and vision of Mike Lazaridis, the inventor of the BlackBerry, the world's first smartphone. But when I first met Mike, he was passionately interested in the future. He wanted to help catalyze the breakthroughs that would shape the world of our grandchildren's grandchildren. He realized that theoretical physics was the smartest area where he could invest to make those breakthroughs happen. It didn't require massive infrastructure, and yet it had changed technology over and over again. The discovery of quantum mechanics, for example, led to the transistor, which led to Silicon Valley, which created literally trillions of dollars of value and changed our society. And so Perimeter was created to focus on the deepest problems in fundamental physics, the moonshots. Successive federal and provincial governments, as well as private donors, have all recognized Perimeter's strategic value, and they've invested in us. Our funders all understand that theoretical physics is a low-cost, high-impact investment for advancing all of science and technology. In just 20 years, Perimeter has measurably increased Canada's international standing in physics. We're ranked as a top center in the world. In fact, the 2021 Nature Index rated Perimeter as Canada's highest performing independent research institution. Perimeter has catalyzed the Quantum Valley, a rapidly growing quantum ecosystem in the Waterloo-Toronto corridor. We've trained over 1,000 young researchers, and our educational outreach programs reach tens of thousands of students and teachers across Canada every year. So how have we done it? Well, there are many things that make Perimeter stand out, that make us different, but I want to focus on one critical factor: talent. We've always been uncompromising in recruiting at the very highest levels. We don't hire based on quotas, but on opportunities. We look for daring, brilliant young minds that match the ambition of the Institute, people who want to make breakthroughs, who are willing to take risks. When I think about Perimeter, I think about the people. So briefly, hopefully, you'll now see 3 pictures that exemplify Perimeter's approach. On the top left, there's the CHIME telescope out in Penticton, BC. CHIME has been called the world's first software telescope, and the brains behind that software is Perimeter researcher Kendrick Smith. Kendrick's algorithms have enabled CHIME to pick out faint signals from an enormous data stream in real time. His work has literally vaulted Canada to the forefront of radio astronomy in the world. On the top right, perhaps a familiar image, and Avery Broderick. One of the first things Avery did when he joined Perimeter was host a conference where he and his friends convinced the leaders of a dozen radio telescopes around the world to create a new collaboration called the Event Horizon Telescope, or EHT. Avery was confident that the EHT could do something that many thought was impossible. And we were confident in Avery. So we invested in a few more conferences, some graduate students, some postdocs, some computational resources. The payoff in 2019, Avery was one of the 4 lead EHT scientists who unveiled the world's first image of a black hole. It was a remarkable technological achievement, one that has really transcended science now and reached out to touch humanity. On the bottom, we have on the far right, a young researcher from the PA up in Manitoba, Roger Melko. Roger really kicked off a firestorm in his field with research combining machine learning and quantum matter. So to support and amplify his work, we created the Perimeter Institute Quantum Intelligence Lab. We call it PICKLE. Again, our investment was small, some space, some graduate students, some postdocs. But what PICKLE is doing is unique. It brings together researchers from academia, quantum startups, and the government. There are now several copycat institutes in the US and Europe trying to do the same thing. In the 5 years that we've had PICKLE, they've made major discoveries and in fact spun out 2 startups, one headed by Estelle Enoch, the woman to his left. Estelle gave up an incredible offer from Microsoft down in the States because she thought she could do more interesting work right here at Perimeter. In each of these cases, what makes this possible isn't scale, it's investing in exceptional talent. It's finding brilliant and daring young minds, giving them a secure home, equipping them with the right resources, and inspiring them to take on the biggest challenges. So thank you very much.
Thank you kindly for the presentation. Moving along, we're going to have the Vice President of Research and Innovation from the University of Ottawa, Dr. Charbonneau.
Sylvain Charbonneau, yes.
Charbonneau.
So, Monsieur le Président, chers membres,
Mr. Chair, dear committee members,
the invitation to meet with you. I'm very pleased to contribute to your important study on successes, challenges, and opportunities for the science in Canada. Vous avez entendu le témoignage.
You've heard the testimony from Gilles Patry from U15 yesterday and Mona Namer, who have tight bonds with the University of Ottawa. Their presentations, as well as those of other witnesses, will be very useful, I'm sure.
For the support you have given to post-secondary institutions across the country. I also want to express our appreciation for the vision and efforts by the chairperson that led to the creation of this standing committee that gives voice to science, research, and innovation in Canada.
My name is Sylvain Charbonneau. I'm the Vice President of Research and Innovation at the University of Ottawa. Before joining University of Ottawa, I was a researcher and executive director at the National Research Council of Canada. I also have my small photonics business, so I'm an entrepreneur. It's based here in Canada North.
I've had the unique privilege of being part of several transformative research evolutions, and more recently to answer the call in my leadership role at the University of Ottawa on everything from the pandemic to advanced technology in areas such as quantum, 5G, and cybersecurity. With excellence, relevance, and impact as our guidepost, U-Ottawa is spearheading research and innovation initiative that align with industry-relevant research, the translation of research-derived innovations to product and startups, and the development of an entrepreneurial mindset at all levels of the university. This means creating an ecosystem that bridges together academia, government, and industry for the commercialization of discoveries into the next generations of high-growth companies, new investment, and the creation of jobs. Whether it is building the first ever university industry research lab in the heart of Canada's largest technology park in Canada North, or a first in Canada partnership with IBM in cybersecurity, are working with TELUS to make our campus 5G ready, our institution is playing a critical role in shaping Ottawa and Canada's future. Canada's research excellence is world-class. Our talented scientists and researchers are developing innovative solutions that generate economic growth and solve complex and pressing societal problems. As we move out of the pandemic, Our researchers and students' expertise will be needed to build a Canada that is more competitive, more sustainable, and healthier. But more is needed to propel Canada to the forefront of research and innovation globally. Between 2014 and 2018, the number of full-time researchers per million inhabitants in Canada declined by 4.8%. During that same period, the number of researchers in the US increased by 4.9%, the UK, 9%, and Germany by a full 20%. Between 2014 and 2018, 32 countries increased spending on R&D, boosting global research spending by 19%, outpacing the growth of the global economy. Canada was not one of these countries. Canada ranked 23rd in the 2021 World Index Healthcare Innovation Analysis, a drop from 17th the year before. I see these statistics as opportunities, not just for government, but academia and private sector. Our combined strength is the path forward. We stand ready to help create the conditions to allow innovation to flourish, and along with it, entrepreneurs, new companies, new products, services, solutions, as well as generations of highly skilled graduates. Talent is the prize currency. Let me repeat, talent is the prize currency. And Canada's universities hold the key to unlocking the potential of the next generation of highly skilled and diverse talent. Locally, U Ottawa and its affiliated Research Hospitals Institute are on a mission to break down the traditional silos between academia, healthcare, government, and industry. For example, the Coronavirus Variant Rapid Response Network is led by U Ottawa and brings together a network of researchers from across the country to address the threat of emerging COVID variants such as Omicron. It is our first line of defense against these new variants. In addition, U Ottawa is investing in critical research and innovation infrastructure, such as the new Advanced Medical Research Center and the Ottawa Health Innovation Hub to help bring research discoveries to market. Our partners, the Ottawa Hospital, has planned to expand its biotherapeutic manufacturing center to manufacture vaccines, biotherapeutics, and new therapies for infectious disease and cancer. It will be a major asset to combat the next pandemic. I encourage you to invest in our universities to ensure Canada is leading internationally on what I call the 3 T's: talent, technology, and transformative initiative. We stand ready to lead Canada's charge to push the frontiers of knowledge and enhance our country's innovation impact. And along with it, the entrepreneurs, the new companies, products, services, solutions required for a better Canada, all enabled by the next generation of highly skilled graduates who flourish in an environment that is inclusive, diverse, and welcoming. Finally, I would like to extend an invitation to the committee members to visit us at the University of Ottawa and see firsthand the innovation of today and the talent of tomorrow. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you kindly. I head over for my hometown, actually, and Dean and Professor of the College of Agriculture and Bioresources. We're lucky to have with us tonight Dr. Bernard Hahn.
Great. Thanks very much, Corey. Good evening. I speak to you today from Treaty 6 territory, the traditional homeland of the Métis and the center of the Prairie Provinces. I grew up in Saskatchewan and did my first 2 degrees here before moving to California for my PhD. I returned to USask as a professor of soil science and eventually started as Dean of Agriculture and Bioresources in summer of 2020. The Prairie Provinces are home to 81% of Canada's farmland. I'm here to talk about how agriculture and ag research are part of the solution for achieving Canada's climate goals. I speak as both a dean whose college transcends any perceived boundary between environment and agriculture, and as a scientist whose research has always focused on that interplay between soils and their environment. With that, I'll begin my comments where I'm grounded, in the soil. In 1937, Roosevelt said, "A nation that destroys its soil destroys itself." Soil performs a myriad of ecosystem services, only one of which is supporting plant growth. Soil plays a crucial role in global water and nutrient cycles, in particular carbon and nitrogen cycles, which are essential for plant growth, but problematic when mismanaged. On the prairies, we celebrate the no-till success story, a widespread change in management that served to drastically reduce erosion, conserve water and nutrients, and increase carbon storage. A win-win-win. But to further enhance soil carbon sequestration and any associated benefits, we must further our understanding of what drives carbon dynamics, how agronomic decisions affect the quantity and the quality, right down to the molecular level of the carbon that is stored. Moving on to plants, the Crop Development Center here at the University of Saskatchewan is another incredible success story. When you drive our endless prairie highways, flanked by fields of cereals, oilseeds, and pulses, the impact of crop breeders is everywhere. But crop breeding is about more than increasing yield or commodities. With genomic advances, we are able to isolate specific traits and look at how they perform under different environmental conditions, to develop crops that have a higher probability of success under climate extremes. Furthermore, what traits contribute to greater carbon sequestration or require less fertilizer and the associated energy inputs, or are more resilient to emerging threats coming with climate change, like new pests and pathogens? This is all part of climate change adaptation, and research in this area is going to be crucial in the years ahead. And let's move up the food chain to animal agriculture. It gets a bad rap from an environmental perspective, but here's the thing. Of that 81% of Canada's ag land that's here in the prairies, over a third of that is used for pasture or forage. It feeds animals who feed us. And pasture tends to be grown where we can't produce other crops due to climate or soil limitations. But perennial grasses and forage crops are also massive carbon sinks, meaning animal agriculture is actually the most environmentally appropriate use of a large proportion of our very large land base. So rather than just focusing on eating less meat, can we better understand the role of animal agriculture as part of the ecosystem? How can we optimize grassland and forage productivity, and by extension, soil health and carbon sequestration? And can we tweak diets and supplements to even further to reduce methane production? And finally, not everything we grow is consumed by humans. Canola crushing for our fryers or our biodiesel also produces canola meal that can be used as animal feed. Plant-based protein extracted from field peas has starch as a byproduct, which can be turned into pill casings or compostable packaging. Wherever possible, can we integrate stewardship of the land and water and plants and animals into a closed loop system? Are we doing everything we can to capture value and minimize waste? Our bioprocessing scientists and our economists can help us by identifying opportunities for fully utilizing what we produce and by understanding all the costs and benefits of our decisions, both direct and indirect. Our long-term success requires research that spans boundaries. And the very success of prairie agriculture is built on collaborations among university and government researchers, industry, and the farmers and producers. Programs like CAP and AgriScience Cluster are examples of funding mechanisms that have worked really well and should be continued. But we continue to look for more ways to facilitate cross-sector collaboration, including on things like infrastructure. Here in Saskatchewan, we're currently looking at opportunities for a new plant growth facility that would support shared research needs of university, Ag Canada, NRC, and the private sector. And right now, our biggest challenge is a workable shared governance model. How can we make this easier? In closing, in the prairies, our researchers and our ag industry are already part of the climate change solution, and we are willing and able to do more. But we need the infrastructure, support systems, and funding in place to do the necessary research, and then the policy to translate it into action. Together, we can and will dig deeper and explore new ways forward, recognizing that the best opportunities will grow our collective future, contributing to both economic and environmental sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation, and I thank the witnesses as well for the other two. We're going to start into our 6-minute round of questioning, and the first member to question our witness is MP Baldinelli.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for joining us this evening. Thank you for your presentations, very informative. What I've found over the last meeting and going into today's meeting as well is this notion of creating an ecosystem as being the foundation. And Dr. Charbonneau, you had mentioned that yourself. Last session we had the Chief Science Officer come to make a presentation. She talked about the ecosystem foundation is critical to science, research, and innovation moving forward. In fact, if you go and look at documents such as the Naylor report from 2017, they talk about harmonization, collaboration, coordination of programs, agencies, and administration. So my question, in fact, one of the other witnesses talked about this notion of a one-step process, so that dealing with the government isn't as difficult, isn't as cumbersome, isn't as bureaucratic, for example. So I'd like your comments on the research side from the universities and from agency side in dealing with government, and what better can be done to facilitate the research that you're doing so that the monies that we spend can get delivered to your hands quicker to do the work that you're looking to do. And that could be to any one of you.
So do we want to go in order here, Robert, first?
I'll go with you, Dr. Charbonneau. You had mentioned it directly in your remarks.
Okay. So thank you very much for the question. Indeed, listen, you're absolutely right. It takes a village to bring research into the commercial success, right? So let's see what let's look at what happens within our own ecosystem here in Ottawa. Ottawa is a very rich G7 capital. It has a number of federal government departments which have research line management. You have an ecosystem here in Ottawa where you have a very strong IT ecosystem. And of course, you have the hospitals and you have the universities. Often you see solitude that exists within all of these ecosystems. How to best integrate the collaboration between the various parties is actually very important. And this is what we've been trying to do here at the university, to try to bring these solitudes together and to complement each other with the various programs that exist within the federal government. It could be Tri-Council and it could be others. I think we've been quite successful in doing this. I think more needs to happen. You've heard in your meeting on Tuesday that one of the challenges that we have in this country is related to the SRED program, okay, the SRNED tax credit that exists. Indeed, the business expenditure in R&D in this country is in free fall. How can we best support our industrial sector in order to invest into the research ecosystem? I think that's very important. And how do we bring these national lab scientists? I mean, it was mentioned earlier by Mr. Myers of how we could be doing this. So it's all of the above, trying to bring this ecosystem together. It does take a village, and it's all about talent and the mobility of these talents from one to the other sectors.
I could speak briefly to that as well.
Sure. Dr. Han, yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I just saw that you unclicked there, Dr. Myers. I'll keep my comments brief. So I would comment on a couple of pieces. One, it would be helpful, as I mentioned in my comments, with respect to infrastructure, to think about how we can ensure that we've got optimized use of shared infrastructure. So for example, the plant growth facility I spoke of, we've got different institutions all co-located here on the University of Saskatchewan campus with shared needs, and the cost of those shared needs exceeds what any one of us could realistically achieve on our own. But in order for us to maintain or regain our status as global leaders in crop development and in some of the genomic aspects that I was speaking about earlier, it's really urgent for us to put this together. So we're, to make it easier for us to be able to collaborate across those boundaries, because we are finding that the difference in terms of expectations or how we approach the governance structures is one of the big challenges. But I think it's also a real opportunity. So when we think about the funding timelines, for example, that university grants typically operate on versus some of the opportunities that might be available through partnership with some of our federal agencies, I think there is real opportunity there for us to build on that and to create a really powerful partnerships. But we do need to think about how do we break that down, because I think some of those silos that Dr. Charbonneau referred to are a function of those barriers that were perhaps put in place for security reasons or perceived security reasons, but have now served as a barrier to collaboration as well.
If I could, for Dr. Meyer, if you could quickly provide some comments.
Sure. I mean, here in my domain, there is an interesting ecosystem. Of course, it's an innovation spectrum. We're at the end of fundamental research, but we do connect with people who are doing, experiments, who connect with people who are looking for applications, and in fact, there's venture capital that's investing in these areas. In my particular instance, what I would focus on is an issue that came up the other evening, which is to have secure ongoing funding. I'm hoping that the Strategic Science Fund is a step in that direction, but it's certainly an issue when you're trying to recruit talent across the border that they want to know that there's a secure path forward, not just for the next 2 years, 5 years, but they want to build a career here. And so that secure funding is really key to our success.
Thank you kindly, Dr. Meyer. Moving along to the next member, Madam Diab, for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair. I guess panelists, thank you very much for attending our Historic Science and Research Standing Committee here in Parliament. And as you know, our timing is timed. And so I just want to focus a couple of questions to you, Dr. Charbonneau. You spoke about things that I'm interested in the whole science world, but given my time here, attraction and retention. And in particular, you spoke about attraction and retention of researchers. And in your years and in your position, what have you observed as the most important factors influencing the university's ability to attract researchers and to retain them? And then I guess aside from that, have those factors changed in the last 2 years given COVID, I guess, is what I would also like to ask. And how do you see that going post-pandemic? I know it's a mouthful, but, you come from the University of Ottawa, and quite frankly, I've always compared Ottawa to where I come from, Halifax, in terms of a community where you kind of talked about the universities, the hospitals, sort of the collaboration, the things going on. And so I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
And how much time do I have?
Well,
this is a topic that
don't take forever, but as best as you could.
So
you got 4.5 minutes left.
Attraction and retention of talent is of the most important for this country. The talent will go wherever the investments are. Okay, so I will answer with regards to COVID. It has been extremely difficult to attract international talents into this country. They're not able to travel. It's difficult for the interviews. There are programs in place now that was launched recently about the Canada Excellence Research Chairs that will certainly help us to attract world talent into our respective regions. This is the most important, as I mentioned in my remarks. This is the most important asset that we have, not only in universities but across the spectrum, industry as well. When we establish our satellite campus, I'd like to call it, in Canada North, right? I heard three things from industry. What do they want? They want talent, number one. They want the ability to reskill their people. And number three, to partner with universities to bring the next generations of solutions into their hands. That's the main three things. And like I said, retaining our talent is very important. And if we don't invest into our infrastructure, and the indirect costs of research, the research support fund that the federal government provide is very important for the university, of course, in order to put this infrastructure in place. So I will limit it at this, but I could go further because I think my colleagues might want to.
Let me ask you one more question then in the time that I have. Before coming to Parliament, I was in the provincial government in Nova Scotia, and I know we use the services of University of Ottawa. Alors, je voudrais vous poser.
I would like to ask you another question. At the University of Ottawa, I think it's the biggest bilingual university globally. That's what I heard. Is that true? And could you explain to us how the diversity of your students, researchers, and professors contribute to your research activities? How much time do I have left? About 2 minutes. Ms. Diab, this is an excellent question. You know, University of Ottawa is the biggest bilingual university throughout the world, French and English. We have over 45,000 students and 15,000 are Francophone. Yes, we do attract French-speaking students from Canada, but also globally, and from African countries as well. When you talk about diversity, English-speaking and French-speaking Africa is very well represented in our institution. Of course, it's very important to deliver programs that meet their expectations, of course, and we do so diligently at the University of Ottawa. We have several hundreds of programs in both languages, of course, and your French is excellent, by the way. Thank you very much. I am Lebanese.
Quickly, I've got 1 minute left. Can I get your opinion on research, university collaboration, enterprise, so academia, government, enterprise, sort of from your perspective, and how has that been affected the last 2 years?
Well, I would say that collaboration has been a key to Perimeter's success. Certainly in training graduate students, we're not a degree granting institution, and so we work with University of Waterloo, but universities throughout Southern Ontario in all of our training programs, but also in the research. I mean, I told you about Avery Broderick and Roger Melko. They're both jointly appointed here and at the University of Waterloo. And again, we have joint appointments with universities throughout Southern Ontario. In fact, we've got one associate faculty who's at the University of Dalhousie now in the math department there. And so these kinds of collaborations, I see it as not just an opportunity to work and to diversify or increase our reach, but we're also trying to raise the level of research across the country. We live in a community, and we'd like to see the entire community flourish.
Thank you kindly, Dr. Myers, as well. Moving on, we will have, for 6 minutes, MP Blanchette.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Tout d'abord,
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I would like to welcome our witnesses tonight and to thank them for being here. My questions are for Mr. Charbonneau. You explained very clearly in your opening remarks very eloquent data, striking data on the number of full-time researchers that dropped between 2014 and 18. The number of students in Canada, that's about 5%, 4.8 more specifically. And throughout the same period, we've seen that the opposite, 4.9% increase in the U.S., 8.9 increase in the U.K., and 20.6 increase in Germany. your counterpart, Mr. Patry, that you probably know very well, who was also rector at the University of Ottawa, and he represents U15, and he also told us about the number of researchers in Canada that dropped over the past 6 years. Unfortunately, Canada is the only G7 country that's experiencing such a downturn. Can you give us more information on this data, and why is Canada missing the boat, if I may? It's a question of investment, of additional investment over the years. I think that's what explains these shortfalls. On the academic side, professors are aging in Canada, and there's very little replacement amongst researchers, and that's why we have a lot. We have a hard time filling the gap in the academic sector. It's because of investments from the federal and provincial government. We have great programs, My Tax, for example, that facilitates training for students in the private sector, for them to gain experience. And earlier, I was talking about SRED, the Scientific Research and Experimental Development Tax Incentive Program. I encourage you to look at Research InfoSource if you didn't have the opportunity. We list the 50 or 100 best Canadian companies in their investments in R&D, and it gives you a clear picture to see where activity is more intense in Canada. It's very interesting to see that progression, and it's a question of investments, major research projects, and I would like to salute to the government for having launched in the 2021 budget, $2.2 billion for bio-innovation and biomanufacturing. I think this is a great progress on the healthcare side and research. We had a hard time, as you know, getting vaccines to fight COVID, and I think that will help us a lot. Thank you, Mr. Blanchette. And as a follow-up question, you also mentioned 2014-18, 32 countries increased their spending in R&D. Unfortunately, in the 20 past years, Canada is the only G7 country that reduced investments in R&D. And between 2001-2019, we went from 10th to 19th on the global index. You're talking about investments. We can't be against virtue, but is it enough to reverse the trends and what we've lost in the past 20 years? We could talk about this for a long time, and I don't want to compare this with the U.S. or Germany, but in a sense I have to. So for the business expenditures in R&D in Canada, it's a free fall in Canada. We're minus 1.5%, and that means that there are very little expenditures on the industrial side. The government would like to develop a Made in Canada DARPA if you want, but the federal government could use a mechanism where not only investments in R&D could facilitate development and innovation if you want, but spending power. DARPA's success in Canada is explained is due to American defense. A big percentage of different federal departments in the U.S. And this is a possibility for the country to attract and to facilitate innovation, commercialization of those inventions, to put them in the hands of the government. You know that a lot of innovation have been marketed that are revolutionary, cell phones, or that you can find in cell phones now, GPS and others. that are very interesting. Thank you, Mr. Charbonneau. How much time do I have left, Mr. Chair? Then I will give my 8 seconds. Thank you, Mr. Blanchette.
We're keeping it within 6 minutes. Not all members have done that tonight, so I recognize the good behavior. Moving on to the next member, we have MP Cannings for 6 minutes.
Well, thank you all for being here today. Sorry I was a little late getting here, but I did try to listen to your testimony as I ran between the House of Commons and this building. And I want to start with Dr. Bédard-Hahn, simply because it's always wonderful to talk to a soil scientist. I have a bit of there's a soil scientist theme running through my family with my brother-in-law as a soil scientist. My father and my uncle worked for Agriculture Canada in Summerland in the soil building, and so it's not often that I meet soil scientists again, and it's great to have you before us. So with that in mind, because all my connections to soil scientists are with Agriculture Canada, Agri-Food and Agriculture Canada, whatever it's called now, I'm just wondering, and I know they have a center in Saskatoon, I'm just wondering about, I guess I have a broad question about collaboration and cooperation between academic institutions like the university and government research as we have there. And you talked about sharing resources and things like that. Is that something that goes on easily? Is it something that we should foster, both in terms of, say, infrastructure and equipment, but also, just collaboration on projects?
Absolutely. So thank you for that question. I would say it absolutely goes on easily and naturally to some degree, because there are relatively, in a per square kilometer basis, there's perhaps not as many soil scientists as there could or should be in the prairies. Some of my own collaborations, certainly earlier in my career, were very close collaborations with Agriculture Agri-Food Canada scientists who are co-located, and up until actually fairly recently, we had a number of the scientists co-located right in our building. So the Ag Canada building is right next door, but we actually had some of those scientists sitting right in our building and sharing facilities and lab space here. And it was only as our college continued to grow and some of those scientists as they retired, eventually the remaining few moved back next door. But certainly across all disciplines that are represented here, we do see really strong collaborations, both with the center right here in Saskatoon, as well as with the center in Swift Current and other centers across the prairies. And part of that has to do with the complementarity of our expertise. So it's certainly something that we always work towards. But I do think that we can continue to work on making that simpler. And so, as I alluded to, there's the potential for sharing infrastructure, as well as just trying to make it a little bit smoother to be able to share some of those resources. We've worked through it. We've got the systems in place now. But I think anything we can do to continue to expedite and simplify those types of processes, I think would certainly go a long way towards facilitating those and strengthening those collaborations. But I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't indicate that as I said earlier, really much of the success comes from those close collaborations throughout. So the original soil survey units were co-located right here in the building, and we do many of our plant breeders work really closely with the breeders that are located next door, and that is absolutely something that we need to continue to work on.
And is that something that happens at a lot of federal agriculture research facilities? I know there used to be, when I worked at UBC, there was a federal agriculture station at the university, and I think that's been closed down now, and those people have moved to Summerland, where my father worked, and I kind of grew up in that station in a way. But I just wondered if there is a policy, if you know, that really
I don't know if it's
that helps that collaboration.
Yeah, I don't know that it's an official policy, but it's certainly something that seems to naturally occur and be fostered. And part of that is that scientists get trained at universities and then go on to become research scientists at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. And so those collaborations come quite naturally. And also part of that comes from the research scientists with Agriculture Agri-Food Canada in many times will work closely with universities so that they can work with graduate students and train graduate students. So we have grad students that are often co-supervised with Ag Canada scientists, whether they're based here or elsewhere. And those students then might come here, take their courses, and then go back to the station, whether it's in Swift Current or Lethbridge, and do their field research in partnership with an Ag Canada research scientist. In Summerland, of course, with the opening of the UBC Okanagan campus, that certainly strengthened their university partnerships as well. And I did a sabbatical at the Summerland station, so I know there's some excellent scientists and some excellent collaborations there.
Okay, well, thank you. I think my time is pretty much up.
I think you still have 15 seconds, Mr. Kennings. If I could just
jump in there.
Yes, you do have time. We do want to hear from you.
He still has 15 seconds. If I could just add on the previous answer, yes, indeed. Canada is just too small not to collaborate. And the national labs are extremely important for the universities and the entire ecosystem, to be honest. I could talk about Quantum. So we have a joint center in extreme and quantum photonics at the University of Ottawa, joint with the National Research Council. I could talk about the largest nuclear magnetic resonance in the country, which was purchased by CFI grant, which are located in a national lab. Or I could talk about the importance of having graduate students, as was mentioned previously, which are being co-supervised. And with many of our adjunct professors in university, and I'm talking probably across the board here in Canada, come from the national lab. So it's a very rich environment and should not be forgotten. Thank you.
Fabulous. Now we're going to move on to the 5-minute round, and we'll have MP Williams up.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, everyone. I'm going to start with Dr. Myers. I think that perimeter just sounds amazing, and it's things I could never understand, but I think it's incredible. I wanted to talk about Canada's quantum potential. I know that we have some centers in Quebec. We certainly have where you're doing. What makes our quantum potential different from that in the U.S., and how will Canada gain an edge as we move that forward in advancing and developing it?
I think that really it's amazing that Canada is a player in that domain, but I think it's been decades, literally. I mean, I know we started in the early 2000s, or Mike Lazaridis actually started in the early 2000s, investing and drawing attention to that particular area. The investments that we see now around the world are just off scale in that particular area. So I think it's important to double down and bet on the excellence that we have here because of those past investments. But it's also an opportunity to collaborate. I mean, certainly we've talked about collaboration across the country, but I think there's also opportunities to collaborate outside and with those global players. Certainly here at Perimeter, we're working with scientists at NIST down in Maryland, with Harvard out in California. These are leading research centers in their own right, and it would be a real lost opportunity if we weren't working with the best in the world down south of the border there.
Fantastic. And is there a difference what we're doing? Do you collaborate also between the provinces and all those centers? I'm assuming that you'd have massive collaboration in Canada, correct?
We actually have various programs. One of them is the affiliate program. So like-minded faculty at universities all across Canada. I think it hits, every province. we give them an opportunity to come here and collaborate with us. COVID was mentioned. Of course, it's on the tip of everybody's tongue. But we've also got, started, a decade and a half ago, we started recording all of our lectures, all of our conferences, all of our seminars, and those are readily available to scientists all across the country. So that's a resource that puts our research, the research that we're hearing about, center stage for anybody who's interested across the country.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. Dr. Bedard Hahn, a big part of being successful in innovation is developing our own products in our own field, not just copying or paralleling the advances of the Americans. We need to take advantage of the resources we have here, clean energy and natural gas, critical minerals, and agriculture, rather than going on and copying what they've done. We have more farmland than any other country in the world, which we can harness into world-leading innovation. How can we turn Canada into an agricultural leader in innovation in food processing?
Great. Well, thanks very much for that question. I think one of the key places for us to invest to make that possible is in supporting those innovation and that risk space. And so we're certainly seeing more and more now investment in the startup and the opportunities here in Saskatchewan and in the prairies in general than we have in the past. And so tremendous growth in terms of the bioprocessing space. So we're trying to move away from that notion of we're just a net exporter of commodities to looking at more and more opportunities for bioprocessing here. And so we look at the strengths and the strides that we've made in terms of plant-based protein and the processing there. But as I alluded to in my remarks, I think one of the really important pieces there is to recognize that along with those bioprocessing opportunities, there are other spin-off opportunities, right? Because we're rarely taking one commodity and turning it wholesale into something else. There's usually fractions that are being used. And so whether we're talking about the new energy plants that are being produced that are going up in parts of the prairies that are looking at producing energy from canola that cannot be used for human consumption, right? Sometimes it's just off grade. That doesn't mean it can't be used for biodiesel. But there are byproducts. I alluded to canola meal, but that's only part of it, right? And so we need to continue to invest in that foundational science that says, okay, what is this? What is in these byproducts? What are the useful pieces of these byproducts, and what would it take for us to turn this into something useful? Whether that's from a soil amendment through to some other types of products that can maybe be used in manufacturing of other types of materials. So I think that some of that, there's the foundational research that's looking at the composition, right? Our tools for examining what those different compounds are made up of, that toolkit has continued to grow, but then providing the space and the investment for those ideas to incubate. And so it's really exciting to see more of that investment happening here. And I think that having that supportive ecosystem supported at all levels will be key going forward.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes MP Williams' time. Now we will have, for 5 minutes, MP McKinnon.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sharing my time with Jenna Suds. Go ahead.
Terrific. Thanks so much. And pleasure to be with you here tonight. I have so many questions, but I'd like to focus on one issue we haven't talked about too much yet. And I'm going to direct this to Dr. Charbonneau. You talked about talent being so key, and we're here today to talk about the successes, the challenges, and the opportunities for science in Canada. And so thinking of the challenges and opportunities and recognizing tomorrow, actually, February 11th, is declared as the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. I'd like to get your perspective on how we are doing with respect to attracting and retaining more women and diverse individuals.
Excuse me, Madam Subs, you got to put your headphones down. The translators haven't.
Apologies.
Okay.
It's a bad habit. I drink tea and I flip it up. Should I repeat, or are we okay?
No, No, I
okay?
think we're okay, but we're eating into time, so please hurry.
Yep. So the question being, if you can comment on the progress or the challenges either way with respect to attracting more women and diverse individuals to STEM-related careers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jenna, for the question. Because you mentioned STEM related, I was going to go on a tangent to say, I think in certain disciplines, Canada is doing extremely well on the diversity of attracting stellars in various fields. In the STEM discipline, I do agree that we have some there's added complexity, and if you put on that the fact that at the University of Ottawa there is a need for bilingualism in the mix, right? So visible minorities, women, STEM discipline, and bilingual, the pool of talent becomes increasingly smaller. So that's the ecosystem in which I live in on a daily basis. Having said that, I think that most universities, if not all universities, and led by your chair, in fact, when we introduced the EDI categories for the Canada Research Chair, certainly stimulated the ability of a university to go and attract women and visible minorities and people with disabilities and Indigenous scholars in all fields. Now that we are progressing in our ways, it will be divided into the three councils. So the social sciences, the STEM discipline, if you wish, or NSERC, and the CIHR, the health sciences. And we're going to be asked to try to meet these equity targets up till 2029. So at the talent level on the Canada Research Chair side of things, but there's so much more that needs to be done in all of our respective institutions, to be honest with you. How do we do this? It's a challenge that every university is dealing with, but we're making significant progress. I mean, we have data on this.
Good, great to hear. I'm going to share my time with MP Bradford, as I know she had a question.
Thank you so much, MP Suds. I really appreciate it. So, Dr. Myers, first of all, it's so fascinating to have you with us. I am from Kitchener-Waterloo, so I'm really familiar with Perimeter, and so glad you could join us. From your position in Waterloo, how do we develop stronger private-public partnerships so that more grads have jobs and opportunities in Canada so we can compete on a per capita basis with other G7 countries?
That's a great question. I mean, it's a real challenge. I think part of it is, my alma mater, the University of Waterloo, I'm actually a grad of the co-op program. One possibility is one possibility that we're working on is extending that program to the graduate level, to try and connect the students here to do internships with local startups or startups in the Toronto area. I think that's a major step forward, but it's also, having institutions like the Pickle, where literally we have scientists from local quantum startups sitting at desks side by side with the graduate students, postdocs, and researchers that we have here at Perimeter, and they're sharing opportunities. They're co-supervising students, and I think it really opens the eyes of the graduate students to what the possibilities are. And I think that's really been an effort that we've started here more broadly at Perimeter with a program called Career Trajectories, to really just open the eyes of the highly qualified, young talent here that we have to what the possibilities are beyond the academic career path and out into the private sector. And we've been seeing a number of, successes there where students have started their careers, in startups with major firms in the Toronto area, or they've started, they've launched their own startups. And so it's something that we're working towards, and it's a really important question that you've asked there.
Thank you, Dr. Myers. It's been a very eye-opening committee tonight, and I do want to thank our witnesses here on behalf of all of the committee members for their presentation and for their fulsome answers. We're gonna suspend the meeting so that we could get the people taking part online to re-log in to the proper destination for the in-camera portion of the evening. So with that, we stand recessed for 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you and good.
you.